Hello friends and welcome back to the channel. In today's episode, we'll make some no-knead ciabattas. Yeah, you can get great results putting in minimal effort. And look at them, they're proper legit. Nice and crusty, super soft on the inside, they got that tangy flavor. Another great addition to the no-knead breads playlist. So, I'm going to enjoy this massive sandwich while you watch the video and go and make it yourself. And as always, you'll find a full detailed recipe down in the description box with metric and imperial units. Right, so first things first, let's see what equipment we need. We need a tray with some non-stick paper, a bowl, scales, dough scraper, and a temperature probe. And although this would be enough, there's one more thing that we need to get that classic ciabatta look. And it's an old tea towel, just make sure it's nice and clean. Now on to the ingredients. We need some strong white bread flour, water, yeast, salt, and some olive oil. That's it. So let's get on with it. Get your bowl, add your water. My water is 19 degrees Celsius, but to learn more about dough temperature control, click the link in top right corner. Now to the water, you can add the oil, the salt, and the yeast, and then give it all a good mix. You want to mix everything well before you add the flour. Dissolve any large salt crystals and hydrate the yeast. And now we can add the flour, the last ingredient. And then once again, mix it all up. You want to mix this until there's no more dry flour, and until all the ingredients have been distributed evenly. And if your tool is not doing the job, continue on by hand. Once you've given it a good mix, take the temperature. 22 to 23 degrees Celsius is just about right for this. If it's warmer, you may risk over fermenting it. But if it's a bit cooler, it's no big deal. Now cover up your dough and leave it to rest for 5 minutes. So because we're not kneading this dough, we have to develop the gluten somehow. And we'll achieve this by performing a series of folds. So after resting your dough for 5 minutes, uncover it, wet your hand and fold it over itself, going around in a circle until you reach the point where you started. And that's as simple as it is. The folds will create extra layers in the dough structure, and that will help it keep its shape. Now cover it up and leave it to rest for 5 more minutes. All in all, we want to perform 4 folds at 5-minute intervals. Let me show you a closer look at how I like to fold it. It's best to use both hands, so wet them both, and then using one hand, hold the dough down, and using the other one, fold it over, going around in a circle till you reach the point where you started. And once your dough ball is nice and tight, you can flip it upside down so the seams are at the bottom. And this is only the second fold, and the dough is already looking better, right? But we'll cover it and leave it 5 more minutes. And with every subsequent fold, the dough will become smoother and easier to handle. And most no-knead breads are made this way. Right, so after the 4th fold, the final fold, we want to cover this up and let it rest for 30 minutes. During this time, the dough will get a quick chance to start fermentation, and all we need to do now is pop it in the fridge and forget about it. You can leave it in there for up to 24 hours, so it gives us great flexibility of when to bake. Let's have a look. It's the next day, the dough is nicely puffed up. You don't want it to be huge, then it's most likely over fermented, but this is looking alright. Now we can shape our ciabattas, which is a super simple process. Just grab a handful of flour, sprinkle it around your dough, then grab your scraper, release it from the bowl, pop it out on the table, smooth side pointing down. I mean, I call it shaping, but it's no more than cutting it into pieces. Ciabatta is one of the easiest breads to make. And this recipe, being one where you don't even have to knead the dough, makes it even easier. The effort you have to put in versus the result that you get out of it is almost unfair. Right, make sure everything's nicely dusted with flour, but don't go too crazy. Just don't want anything to stick. And the way I like to do it is square it up with my hands, just make it as square as you can. Then grab your scraper and just cut it into 4. This amount of dough makes 4 decent portions. Now we're going to use our old tea towel. Make sure it's nice and clean. I would suggest putting it on a tray so it's easier to move the dough around. Now grab some flour and sprinkle it all over a nice even layer, then you can rub it in with your hand as well. Remember that we tipped the dough out of the bowl on the table, smooth side pointing down. And it's still like that, and you want to ferment it with the smooth side pointing down. That's the good side, because when we bake it, we're going to flip them upside down again. And this floured towel will give it that classic ciabatta look with the stripes. Now stretch the dough out a little bit, and when you go to place the next one on, create a crease in the towel so it separates the ciabattas. In bakeries they use a thick linen cloth called a couche. And you can use it to ferment breads like baguettes and ciabattas, and even large loaves of bread. But then you need a really thick cloth so it keeps them separate and keeps its shape. Right, these babies look nice and cozy. We can cover them up and leave them for their final fermentation. Make sure you've dusted them with flour a little bit so the cling film doesn't stick. They should take around an hour and a half. Of course, if your kitchen is quite warm, it'll take less time. If it's cool, it'll take longer. And during the final hour of fermentation, you want to preheat your oven to 220 degrees Celsius with fan off. And once they have visibly puffed up a little bit, and they're nice and soft, and when you poke them with your finger, it leaves an indentation, they're ready. You can dust them with a bit more flour so they don't stick to your hands for the next step. In bakeries, actually, they use a piece of wood for this step, or you can use our hand. So grab your tray, and what you want to do is pull your towel towards yourself and then flip the dough onto your hand. Just watch this again. I pull it and I flip it. And that's exactly how we want them, upside down. Make sure there's enough space between them. Get these babies in the oven. They'll take around 14 to 16 minutes, so not too long at all. And once they are puffed up and a bit browned, they're ready. And that's your super low effort, no-knead ciabattas. Quite cool, right? And as always, if you have any questions or suggestions, drop them down in comments. Check out my other videos because my channel is full of recipes and bread baking principles. And of course, don't forget to subscribe. Well, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.